Hello, and welcome to Sleepy Art Critic, a quiet space where ink flows like dreams and history whispers through the hush of night. I'm currently in Japan, and I'll be here for a couple of months. So I thought to dedicate this episode to this amazing place and to one of its most representative artists and art forms. If you're here, you already know. This isn't just about art, it's about obsession, about devotion stitched into every brushstroke, about the endless pursuit of something just out of reach. Tonight, we journey with a man who lived many lives, who changed his name as often as the seasons, and chased perfection with the urgency of a wave racing toward shore. A man who drew not what he saw, but what he understood, who believed that every mountain, every ripple of water, every curve of a fish had a soul worth capturing. He called himself the old man mad about art. Tonight we meet him, not in the museums that now house his genius, but in the flickering lamplight of Edo, in the rustle of woodblock prints drying in the wind, in the silence between brush and paper. This is the story of Hokusai. Shall we begin? In the heart of old Edo, where the lanterns flickered against paper windows and the scent of river mist clung to the early morning, a child was born into a world of shadows and strokes. The year was 1760. Katsushika Hokusai came into being not as a thunderclap, but as a whisper, his cries tucked among the rustling leaves of the Sumida River's edge. He was born Tokitaro, the son of a mirror maker, a humble artisan in a time when mirrors still held magic and superstition. In their silvery surfaces, the nobles saw reflections of beauty and fate. Little Tokitaro watched his father etch fine designs into these polished ovals, dragons curling, birds in flight. Perhaps it was here, in the glint of those reflections, that Hokusai first glimpsed his future. The Edo of his childhood teemed with color and contradiction. Raucous kabuki theaters pressed against silent temples. Silk-draped merchants haggled beneath parasols while monks passed with solemn silence. Art was not luxury. It was breath. It was how the people of Edo laughed, mourned, remembered. And Tokitaro, even as a boy, was restless. He was apprenticed at 12 to a woodblock carver. Under the relentless tap of chisel on cherry wood, he learned to speak with tools. Lines were not just lines. They were intention, emotion, clarity. Within the discipline of carving, Hokusai found his rebellion. Not defiance of technique, but defiance of limitation. The seed of something vast had been planted. When he entered the studio of Katsukawa Shunsho in his teens, he took his first artistic name, Shunro. With brush and ink, he illustrated courtesans, those women whose lives balanced between art and commerce, love and performance. His lines danced with grace, but already they strained against the tropes. Already the spirit of something greater stirred. Hokusai would change his name over 30 times in his life. Each name was a chapter, a rebirth, a shedding of skin. Each was a brush stroke in a painting far too large for one life to complete. The studio of Katsukawa Shunsho had been a cradle, but Hokusai was never meant to stay swaddled. In his 20s, he broke from the Katsukawa school, a departure not just of career, but of spirit. The ukiyo-e masters had their traditions, their rigid subjects and modes. Hokusai, ever the nomad of the mind, craved the unexplored. He wandered through styles like a man possessed. He studied the Kano school with its aristocratic austerity, then moved toward the Tosa, embracing their narrative clarity. From the Chinese painters he absorbed the rhythm of mountain and mist. He devoured them all but echoed none. Instead, he recomposed them into a visual vocabulary that was wholly his own. He was still known then as Soryu, and later as Tetsuzo, and still later as Hokusai Tomisa. With each name came a reinvention. But even as he changed outwardly, one thread held fast: his desire to speak to everyone, not just nobles and connoisseurs, but the common people, the fishmongers, the pilgrims, the children and farmers and drunks. He drew for them. He illustrated books, created billboards, designed lanterns, painted fans. He made cheap prints by the hundred. Art for Hokusai was not a pedestal, but a river. It had to flow. During this time, Japan was beginning to crack open. The Dutch at Dejima brought strange books, curved lenses, and alien perspectives. Hokusai studied these with fevered curiosity. From Western engravings and rangaku treatises, he saw linear perspective, shading, and realism, tools of illusion that bent space to the eye's command. He did not copy, he assimilated. Soon, Hokusai's works began to bear an uncanny dimensionality. Roads receded, bridges stretched, mountains loomed with unexpected volume. The horizon no longer lay flat. He was not yet the Hokusai who had birthed the wave, but he was nearing. The brush grew hungrier in his hand. The fire came without warning. It was not the first blaze Hokusai had survived, nor would it be the last. Edo was a city of wood, paper, and wind, always on the cusp of ignition. But this fire was personal. It devoured his studio, his works, his tools, his memories. It swallowed whole years of creation. And yet from the soot, something stirred. Hokusai rebuilt, not just his workspace, but himself. He took a new name, Taito, and under this banner he launched a body of work that would stretch the limits of ukiyo-e. He no longer followed trends. He summoned them. His line grew sharper, bolder. He illustrated ghost stories with spectral elegance. He drew massive wall paintings, dragons writhing in temples, and he began to teach. In the dim light of his new studio, students gathered, dozens of them. Hokusai taught with fury, sometimes launching brushes at their heads when their lines were weak. He was a man possessed, not cruel, but desperate to inject urgency into their hands. Learn to grasp the essence of a form, he said, not its surface. Among these students was a woman, his daughter, Oi. Oi was no ordinary disciple. She was sharp of eye, fierce of will. When her marriage failed, she returned to her father's side, not to care for him, but to work with him. They painted side by side, sometimes indistinguishably. She signed few of her own works, but Hokusai knew, and he respected her. As they toiled through days and into candlelit nights, Oi became his anchor, his assistant, his collaborator, his echo. The thunder that had leveled his past had cleared a path, and in the silence after the fire, the brush found its true rhythm. Soon, Hokusai would begin his most enduring journey toward the mountain. The year was 1830. Hokusai, now nearing 70, signed his work Katsushika Hokusai Itsu and turned his vision toward one object with monastic intensity: Mount Fuji. Fuji was more than a mountain. It was a spirit, a myth, a symbol that transcended paper and pigment. For Hokusai, it was the immovable center of a moving world. Everything changed, the clouds, the people, the tides, but Fuji remained. He set out to paint it 36 times, 36 perspectives, 36 poems in image, but even this number would not contain him. He would add 10 more, 46 views in total, and within each a fragment of infinity. He called the series Fugaku Sanjuroke. Here came the wave, The great wave off Kanagawa was not merely a print, it was a revelation, a claw of water frozen in time, a trembling boat beneath it, Fuji small and stoic in the distance. The composition broke all rules, diagonal tension, sweeping motion, a storm captured in perfect stillness. Viewers had never seen anything like it. The colors were foreign, Prussian blue, a Western import, bold and unnatural, yet essential. The line work held a fluid fury. This was not serenity. It was sublime chaos. The wave was not just water, it was life, death, time. And through it all the mountain endured. Each of the 36 views revealed a different truth. Fuji through rain and fog, framed by bridges, seen from riverbanks, peeking over rooftops. It became a companion, a god, a witness. Hokusai's Fuji was not a place, it was an idea. And in chasing that idea, he reached the apex of his craft. But the old man was not done climbing. Old age did not slow Hokusai. It consumed him more wholly in the pursuit of his vision. His hands trembled, but the brush danced still. He took yet another name, Gakyo Rojin Manji, the old man mad about art. In this period his works became almost feverish with detail. Waves curled in fractal intricacy. Demons emerged from ink clouds. He created the 100 Views of Mount Fuji, a series not of repetition, but of reverence. Each view peered deeper into the mountain's soul. He said, "From the age of 6, I had a mania for drawing the form of things." And he meant it. He claimed that at age 70, he'd only begun to understand the structure of birds and beasts, insects and fish. By 80, he hoped to have made real progress. By 90, to grasp the essence. By 100, he said, he would be a divine artist. And at 110, every dot, every line would be alive. But time is unkind, even to the mad. He lived in squalor. He moved often, dozens of times in his final years, carrying with him rolls of sketches, brushes, inkstones. He and Oi scraped by with commissions and fans, portraits and prints. The neighbors saw an old man and a woman with paint on their sleeves and ink in their hair. They did not see the universe taking shape. In 1849, at the age of 88, he lay in a small rented room in Asakusa. The light had grown dim, the brush too heavy. He whispered, "If only heaven will give me just 10 more years, just 5 more." And then he was gone. His final words, according to some accounts, were a poem. "Even as a ghost, I shall trudge on with brush and ink in hand." He could not stop drawing, not even in death. In the decades that followed, Japan would change. The borders would open, trains would come, steel and electricity. And then war, devastation, rebirth. Through all of it, Hokusai's prints endured. But more than endured, they traveled across oceans, into salons and galleries, into the hands of Van Gogh and Monet, into the minds of Degas and Klimt. The West saw in Hokusai not a relic, but a revelation. He influenced the birth of Impressionism, the abstraction of modernism. His wave echoed in canvas, in architecture, in design. In France, they called it Japonisme. In truth, it was Hokusai's spirit flowing into new brushes. In Japan, his reputation matured slowly, then soared. Today, he is revered not just as a master of ukiyo-e, but as one of the greatest artists the world has ever known. And that wave, the one off Kanagawa, it still crashes on posters, on museum walls, on skateboards and album covers. It moves, it inspires, it lives. Because it was never just a wave. It was the sum of a life drawn restlessly across a century. A man who never stopped reinventing himself, never stopped climbing, never stopped seeing. Hokusai was not one man. He was 30 names. 1,000 drawings, 10,000 obsessions, one endless wave. The wave crossed oceans. When Japan opened its ports in the mid-19th century, Hokusai's prints began to wash ashore in Europe, rolled into crates as packing material, tucked among porcelain and silks. His images arrived without fanfare, accidental ambassadors of a vanished master. But the artist of Europe saw them and felt a jolt. Claude Monet pinned them to the walls of his Giverny studio. Van Gogh copied them in sketchbooks, marveling at their line. Whistler and Degas found in Hokusai a new sense of space. Toulouse-Lautrec borrowed his composition. Klimt borrowed his curves. The West gave this wave a name, Japonisme. In the salons of Paris, in the ateliers of Vienna, in the cafes of London, Hokusai's spirit stirred. His way of seeing, dynamic, flattened, expressive, broke apart the rules of academic painting. The background was no longer background. A tree could be a silhouette. A sky could be a void. In this distant, deceased Japanese artist, Europe found modernism's spark. He had never left Japan. He had never heard their names, but he changed their art forever. There are whispers of paintings never found. Monks speak of dragons he painted on temple ceilings, images now faded to soot. Collectors hunt for volumes of manga he sketched in his final decade. There are rumors of a scroll 30 feet long, depicting the journey of a soul from birth to death and back again. These works may be lost, but they are not gone. They live in echoes, in the confidence of a stroke, the spirit of a curve, the silence between ink and page. They are glimpsed in his surviving sketches, half-finished fox spirits, boiling oceans, flying sages. For every wave we see, a dozen remain beneath the surface, and perhaps that was his intention, to leave behind not a catalogue, but a current. To understand Hokusai, you must understand how he saw. He believed the brush was a conduit, not from hand to paper, but from life to understanding. To draw a bird was not to mimic its feathers, but to fly with it. To draw a mountain was not to trace its ridges, but to feel its weight. He believed in the sacredness of observation. Every wrinkle on a farmer's face, every slouch of a rain-soaked horse, every twist of a vine, these were his sutras. To study them was to worship. He taught that no moment was mundane, that even a splash of water or a beggar's bowl could contain the cosmos. And so he drew. Not just to record, but to participate. He once said, "If I live to be 110, every dot, every line will be alive." That was not vanity, it was devotion. Today his influence is planetary. His wave adorns everything from postage stamps to spacecraft. His style animates film, graphic novels, tattoo sleeves, fashion lines. Architects invoke his asymmetry, designers echo his fluidity, animators channel his momentum. In Tokyo, a museum bears his name. In Paris, a gallery keeps his prints under glass. In classrooms around the world, children trace his outlines, unaware they are walking the paths of an old man who never stopped learning. He exists not in one place, but in all places touched by art. Because Katsushika Hokusai did not simply create images, he altered how we imagine. He painted the mountain so we could climb it. He drew the wave so we could ride it. And he signed his name so many times because no one name could ever contain him. Stand at the foot of Mount Fuji today, and you may see it differently. Not just as a mountain, but as Hokusai saw it. The pulse of the earth, a symbol of permanence in a world always shifting. Perhaps somewhere, An old man still walks the paths around its base, brush in hand, seeing anew. And perhaps we too can look, not just at the world, but into it, with the eyes of a boy from Edo, with the mind of the old man mad about art, because true art is not in the hand, it is in the seeing. And Hokusai saw endlessly, fade to silence, then the soft sound of waves. Thank you for joining us tonight at Sleepy Art Critic. If Hokusai's story moved you, if you felt the brushstrokes in your bones, or simply drifted deeper into the rhythm of his wave, consider leaving a like. It helps others find us in the quiet. Subscribe if you'd like more artists to keep you company in the night, more stories of vision, heartbreak, and creation. And if there's someone out there who might find peace in a painter's story, share this with them. Let the wave carry on. We'd love to hear from you too. Tell us what stayed with you, or who you'd like to meet next. Until then, sleep softly and keep dreaming in color.